Today's episode sees us welcome on Shiv Sakhuja. Shiv is a developer and founder of Magik Labs, a project that focuses on making fiat on and off-ramp to crypto more simple. But in this conversation, we focus on his intellectual conversion to crypto, how he stumbled across the industry and tech after being banned from Venmo due to too many poker transactions. And he also tells us why he decided to quit his software engineering job at Google and take the leap of faith for a career in web3. And we are live. This one we are split across 3 different time zones. It's well across my well past my bedtime, but also well worth it because today we've got Shiv on, who we'll obviously be introducing you to properly. But Shiv is someone that I've kind of been bothering Grant to get in his DMs and get on the podcast kind of since the initial idea and inception of Web3 Nomads, basically, which obviously we will get into. But Shiv is out in San Francisco. We've got Grant in Bali and me in rainy Manchester. It's late, but Shiv, thanks so much for coming on. How are you today, man?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here and love what you guys are doing at Web3 Nomads. So
awesome, man. So Shiv, you are obviously, I don't want to do anything you an injustice and try and kind of give your backstory better than you can, but you are a developer, a founder, bit of a blogger on the side. But do you want to kind of kick things off by telling us more about what you do and kind of, you know, how you started working in this space, and take it from there, and then we'll dig into it.
Yeah, so I'll just start off by saying, like, I started working in the space about a year ago, and the way I say like to say it is that I was intellectually converted 5 years ago, I was professionally converted a year ago, and I'm still on track to be religiously converted.
But, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, so I'll tell you how I got into crypto, because that's a bit of a funny story. I used to play a lot of poker in college, and I got banned on Venmo for too many transactions. It's a lifelong perma ban. I've tried everything to get off. I'm still banned. And so my friends and I, they were also banned. We all started using crypto to, like, you know, settle our game. To settle. And so I just, like, sort of fell into it almost. And then I'd sort of heard about it, but I didn't know too much. Started reading more about it. And as someone who's fairly, you know, technical and interested in this kind of stuff, it pretty much immediately, like, caught my attention. And so that's when I would say I was intellectually converted. And then I went and worked in, you know, Web2 things. So I worked at a startup for a couple of years. And then I worked at Google for 3 years. And you know, that was, like, there was a lot I got out of that and a lot I learned. But over that time, I definitely got more and more interested in the crypto space and more, you know, convinced that this is where I want to be spending my time. And so it organically started taking up more of my time. And then sometime last year, or like probably end of 2021, I knew that I want to work in this space. I didn't really know anyone in the industry. Like, it was very much like a mental block for me. I felt like I don't have an in into the space. I have no idea how I can jump in. And so I figured, like, well, everyone seems to be on Twitter, so maybe I just start writing or, like, meeting people, commenting, like, just, you know, finding my way into it. And so that's how I got into crypto. And then last year I quit my job and started a company called Magik Labs, where we're trying to make onboarding and on-ramping from fiat to crypto very simple.
Great. So before we kind of go down the Magik Labs route and dig into that further, I want to give a little bit more context to the audience listening here, because in May last year is where I kind of first saw this tweet. You put out, "I quit my job at Google to work in Web3. Here's why I believe that now is the right time to work in Web3. Last month, I quit my job as a software engineer at Google, packed up my apartment in Canada, and moved 7,500 miles across the world to India, all just so I could work in crypto." And it's fair to say it went pretty viral. So I think that in itself, tell us more. Tell us why, basically.
Yeah. So part of it was just like personal interest. I was so like mentally checked into crypto and checked out of other
Yeah.
things that I knew, that this is where I want to be spending my time and mental bandwidth. So that was honestly like the big reason for me. And the reason I was so, interested in crypto and Web3 was like partly from my background. I studied computer science and economics, and
Hmm.
I'm like quite technically inclined. Um, so just the concept of programmable internet money really appeals to me. I just think like there's all kinds of use cases that get unlocked, and it's not necessarily something that you think of as being like like a B2C, like immediate use case sort of thing. It's more like,
Hmm.
well, things will happen and they will have ripple effects, and crypto will eventually permeate society. And so I felt so strongly about, that this is the direction, this is the future of crypto, this is the future of the world and finance, then I felt like, you know, it just felt to me like I was disconnected between like what I'm doing and what I believe. And so for me, it was very much about like the mental, like, the mental space I was in. I knew what I wanted to do, I knew what I'm interested in, and I didn't want to not do that for external reasons. So I think that
Yeah.
would be the best way to categorize it.
Great.
So Shiv, with Magik, um, I think I was speaking to someone like about this yesterday, but a lot of crypto can be perceived from the outside as a lot of solutions looking for problems, and obviously we see a lot of kind of fundraising going around that is like drastically higher than it needs to be. But I think with what you guys are doing, it's um, kind of crypto to fiat on ramps. That simple kind of idea of infrastructure products. I don't think a lot of people who are just floating around the edges of this space would realize that there is still kind of really big inefficiencies even in the basic onboarding of the space. So it's like, why was this something that you kind of wanted to tackle? And was there ever any thought of going with into kind of more of a quote unquote project where you've kind of got tokenization or NFTs and things like that, or did you want to purely stick to kind of infrastructure?
Yeah. Sorry, by the way, if my camera is shaky, it's because it's really cold outside. I'm shivering.
It's all good, man. It's all
But
good.
uh, yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, I think for us, like, it was more like, um, spoke to a bunch of people, found that this is a very common problem space, and it's something that I've experienced too, right? Like, fiat and crypto are not interoperable, and if we want to live in a world where crypto has a significant part to play in the financial ecosystem, they need to be like that. They need to be more tightly, or like they need to work better together. And it's something where it's a very global problem, right? So it's like it's different in the US and in Asia and in like other countries. And the space, like there are big players doing this. So like MoonPay, for example, is like one of the good ones in the US. But it's quite geographically fragmented. So like there are different players doing this in different places. And going to India, I saw that a lot. Like, in India, it's like there are different players who work in India. MoonPay will not work. And similarly, like, it's the same in most countries, from the people I've spoken with. So that led me to to this concept, or led us to this concept that like there's clearly a problem here. It's not like yet solved, and it's not likely to be solved like immediately, but everyone in crypto will have to deal with it, right? It's like pretty much anyone and everyone who's in crypto, especially if you care about non-crypto native users, it becomes more important to you, right? Because it's like a fundamental part of the onboarding flow is how do you get your money into crypto? And one approach is like, well, you do it on a centralized exchange, then you withdraw it, and then you swap it and bridge it and whatever, and then you can buy your NFT. And then the other approach is, well, like I got my credit card and like I just want to buy the NFT, and like why can't I do that, right? Um, so that's where I see like us fitting in, or like any kind of on ramp infrastructure play fitting in. You want it to be like tightly coupled with the on chain stuff, so that you can have fiat becoming more interoperable with on-chain.
Is it more of a tech problem or an infrastructure problem then? Or is it a little bit of both?
Both. It's more like like finding the right liquidity providers and people in different countries. Like that's where most of the fees go. So on-ramps are typically more expensive than exchanges to withdraw, like to deposit. Same for off-ramping, but the reason is that they have to partner with liquidity providers in every country or every jurisdiction, and those guys want a cut too, right? So like if they need to take 1.5%, then the on-ramp also needs to take like another 1.5% to make it worth their while. And then they also have to deal with chargebacks and things like that. So plus like every country has its own like local payment methods and its own like preferred payment methods. So credit cards are popular in the US, but they don't have as much penetration in like emerging economies and other parts of the world. A lot of those parts of the world use mobile payment methods. So like, you kind of got to connect all of these different pieces and like bridge them all together, iron out, like they all have their own nuances and kinks, and someone's got to fix all of them and put them all into something that can interoperate with crypto.
And what does it look like from kind of behind the scenes with Magik Labs and like the kind of core team setup? This is one that I like to talk to guests about. And how did you come together as a team, and what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? I saw the smirk there, so
I
can tell
a little bit of a
organized chaos.
Yeah. So the core team is we're 4 founders and 3 of us are technical. So quite a strong technical team. And the way I met them is one of my co-founders used to make YouTube videos about crypto and DeFi, and he was also an engineer, and he used to make pretty deep like technical videos. So in the period of time where I was working at Google and I knew I didn't want to and I wanted to do something in Web3, I reached out to him just to connect and chat about like DeFi ideas and like various things. We ended up speaking and like became friends, and just ended up like chatting every week about things. Eventually, like we realized like, well, we're thinking about very similar ideas. We're both engineers. Like, he had 2 other people who like he was friends with who were also like in the same idea space. And so we just decided to join forces and like build this together. So.
That's great. And I think kind of the golden question is, for me at least, is how does it compare to Google on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
I'm assuming vastly different.
But I'm less money, but I'm enjoying life. So I'm really loving what I do on a day-to-day basis. I'll say that. Like, I was telling someone this yesterday, like I've never enjoyed working and like, doing like work so much as I do now. And maybe that's partly because it's, because I'm, it's my own company, and maybe it's partly because it's crypto and I'm like super passionate about that, or some combination. But either way, it's just something that this is like, if nothing else, like if we don't make this work, fuck it, I had a good time. Like I'm really enjoying it, and I'm learning a lot.
So what I wanted to ask you about as well is, again, not to bounce back to that tweet, but one of the kind of narrative lines out of it was the timing aspect, which I know you've dug into this a lot in the thread and obviously in the deep and medium post, but on a conversational level, what is it about where we're at now, or even where we were just shy of 12 months ago, that you feel is right for anyone that would be listening to make the hop into this industry, or at least start trying to make inroads?
Yeah, I think there's like a few factors, some of which I touched upon then and some of which I've revised a little bit. Firstly, it's like the space has legitimacy now. So like 5 years ago, if you wanted to work in crypto, you were like much weirder than someone who wants to work in crypto today. And that helps, honestly, like mentally, but also just from the perspective of like you have more like traditional companies or like more like, more things that you can work on that are not so far out of whack that it's, really hard for you to wrap your head around it. And so I think that like really makes it easier. But I think like, I don't think that's what you were talking about. I think you were talking about like, what is the reason why is like now a good time to be in Web3 from like the perspective. And that I think is just like, it feels to me like it's not too early and not too late, right? Like, it's not too early that like it's super uncertain and like you have no clue if, it's not like 2012 or 2014, right? And it's also not, it also doesn't feel like we're definitely not at a point where crypto is mature, right? Like there's very few products that have like actual product market fit and actual traction or solving real problems, right? Like even the infrastructure is still pretty rough in a lot of parts of the industry. So it feels like, it's a happy medium place. It's like a much easier time for most people to join than a few years ago. And yet it's probably still super valuable. If the space does take off, you get to ride that wave. And we're not at the end of it yet. So
yeah, I can just back that up 100%. Like even 2017, 2018, like during the 2017 kind of bull market, and then fastly followed by a quite sharp downturn. I feel like this time around, even in market drawdowns, I've never seen such activity during kind of the down market. And that's because I know for a fact there was people actually seeing the added benefit and value, one, of working in the space, two, of what can actually be achieved, and actually trying to solve real problems. 2017, 2018 wasn't necessarily like that. I think 2017, 2018 is how a lot of people still perceive this space from the outside looking in. You just buy tokens and hope they go up. But what happened this time around, it's like people are just cracking on. Like Token 2049 conference last year, if you'd have been just dropped there out of nowhere, didn't know what time it was, you'd have thought we were in like the most roaring bull market of all time, because there was that much optimism around what was actually getting built and people could actually see the vision of it now. So I completely agree. Not too early, but also early enough to show proof of concept and proof of like ideation and things like that. So I personally think I think particularly for like our age, and I won't assume everyone's age here, but I don't think there's a better risk reward industry to be working in right now. And as you said, even if whatever project it is you're working on goes tits up, at least you can say you've tried to work in an emerging industry with extremely exciting kind of values, and you're probably going to wear many hats. And I think that even going forward for your career is probably going to stand you up in better stead than just working in a boring bog standard company. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, definitely. And also like you get this specialized domain knowledge in an industry, which like, even if whatever you're doing doesn't pan out, like you're getting specialized domain knowledge in an industry which is growing rapidly, like really rapidly. And that's got to have some value too.
Yeah, everyone seems to say the same thing, don't they? Like we had Caitlin on from Hero a few weeks ago, and she had said that you're kind of never going to get this opportunity again, probably, to be in the space that we are in the position that it's in. And it's even more reassuring that like every guest we speak to kind of reiterates that, and it's not just some kind of fairy tale idea that we're all telling ourselves. Like it's sort of the shared consensus, isn't it? But I think like, and part of what I like to uncover on this podcast is like, obviously all of the great stuff that we talk about, but equally the headaches. And that I do want to get your take on that as well, Shiva. Again, I could see the smirk creeping out, but when we spoke and we were introduced the other week, we did kind of briefly touch on hiring, didn't we? And how that looks as far as like building out a team. You said there that the founding team are all heavily technical based. What sort of challenges do you get from that aspect in terms of, are you in a position to build out your team? Do you try and do that? Is it just not quite working yet? What does that look like from?
Yeah. I think we're really small right now, and like we are probably not like building out a team and hiring is not like a critical thing for us because we have to hire very few people. And when we do, like, we have to make, put in a lot of effort, and we're small, so it's harder, all of that. But I mean, it's the hard part is like we're small, we're in an industry which people are skeptical about in a bad market. So I don't expect hiring to be easy. And like what we've done like so far, it hasn't been easy, but I don't think like we are at the stage where that's like our biggest problem. And that's partly helped by the fact that we're like a strong technical team. So like we can, we do a lot of most of the coding ourselves. So yeah, but it's it's definitely not like an easy time to be hiring as a Web3 company. But then equally on the other side, I also meet people who are, who are looking to get to work in Web3 and don't have the entry point, or like, but even though they may have the skills or maybe, quite strong candidates. So it feels like there is some kind of mismatch or some kind of gap there.
Yeah.
Did the rest of the team, I mean, I know you mentioned one of the co-founders, he had kind of similar ideas on the space and wanted to solve similar problems. Were the rest of the team kind of crypto native, or have you brought anyone on that's from a kind of traditional Web2 background and got them up to speed on the kind of industry side, or how's that dynamic work?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of our like founding team, they were crypto native. Like, I think they were, use the same phrase, intellectually converted like maybe 2 years ago, and then started working on it like 1 year ago. But in terms of like employees, we have maybe one who like wasn't, in crypto before, and now he is, and he's like crushing it, and he knows, what he's doing.
Nice.
But that's like, I don't like think I have enough data points to say whether that's like common or whether it's better to like find people within the Web3 space.
You'd said that one of the members of the team that you did have that wasn't previously crypto native or kind of working within the space, but they were absolutely killing it. I was asking what role they performed within the team, just out of interest, and how did you kind of come to get to work with them?
So it's a front-end developer.
Cool.
And I don't know how we found him. I don't remember. I think LinkedIn or something.
I do feel at the front end, I'm especially envious of like the guys that look after the design and the front end work, because it's like so easy to come up and just completely kill it, because like you can it's a blank canvas, and as long as you can like transcribe that in some way, it's not even like a comms or marketing role if you didn't understand it and you're trying to like communicate quite technical. Like the front end stuff is very easy.
There was two recently, wasn't there? The Fact the DAO guys. I mean, to be fair, they hired a front end guy quite quickly, and it seems like one of the more difficult roles to place. And then the Tapioca guys were really kind of struggling for a little minute there to try and find someone, but they actually hired completely non-crypto native Web2 guy, whatever you want to kind of call them. They weren't inside the industry whatsoever. And Matt from Tapioca said, this guy is absolutely killing it. He's didn't necessarily he can be coached around the product. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like with anything, like you can be coached around the product, but if he's like a stone cold killer on the front end design things, he seems like completely blown away with his work. So that was a good kind of testament, I suppose, what we're trying to do here is like seeing it firsthand. Just kind of bridging people over and trying to get people to warm up to the idea and letting people see the opportunities in the space. So that was kind of nice to see.
Yeah, I was going to say that's it's literally exactly what we want to hear, isn't it? But I do think that and I'd be interested to know what you think of this shit. But I do feel from the outside looking in, it is quite intimidating to try and think of like probably in what Web2 was years ago. I do think that there is that kind of air. Like, I mean, you touched on it, didn't you, about bad market kind of industry that looks a little bit intimidating anyway. And it's like, even when like we have these kind of conversations with people like yourselves, like very, very technically minded, intelligent people, it almost feels like the kind of ones that are on the periphery are maybe slightly hesitant, probably because of that, which is, I personally think that it's one of the most welcoming spaces and industries that I've worked in throughout my career, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the more like, it's intimidating if like the further out you are, but then the closer you get, you realize it's actually quite inviting. Like people are pretty friendly. Everyone wants to like, everyone's new to the space. There's not like that many people who are like, yeah, I've been doing this for decades and like I know all about blockchain stuff here too. Like it's mostly like friendly people who are like, yeah, I've been here for 2 years and I'm like still figuring my way out, way around. So, and then I think like from a job perspective, a lot of the jobs are pretty similar. So like front end is one where I think it was like it worked out well for us because like it's not like like 90% of the work is like things that the person already knows, at least in our product, and that's true for a lot of products. And then like just being in that environment, you pick up on the other 10%, like or a lot of it, right? So I think it's easier than people think, especially if you're working in a role that is like transferable to Web3. If you're like completely like not in a tech or product or like growth type of role, like that won't transfer easily, then it's definitely more intimidating. But then like you have, in that case, like some of the people I've met with have had success with like literally reaching out to people on like Twitter and LinkedIn, going to conferences and Web3 career fairs and stuff like that. And then also just like being active in like some kind of community. So like, getting like being active in like a DAO, like, or like, a Discord, like you're active there for a while and then you get offered like a moderator position or like community manager. And then, you kind of grow from there. So I feel like it's still like, I don't necessarily have the experience to say like how easy or hard it is, but I've like just looking from from my perspective, it looks like it's honestly in some ways easier than other industries in that like people are more inviting, people are like a lot less people asking for like fancy degrees and like other things, like they just want people who are like enthusiastic, motivated, and like can do the work.
And from your team, I mean, there's a few things that you said that I want to kind of touch on here and there, but with the team as well, are you guys kind of spread out at the minute, or are you all in like San Francisco area, and what kind of freedoms does this give you? I know I wince when I say that, as talking to a founder, because I know that freedom is a tricky word, but how does that look for you, and where are you guys spread? How do you find that workflow?
Yeah, so I moved from Canada to India last year because that's the only, legally, like I couldn't start a company in Canada, blah, blah, blah. So we are all in India, but we're in different cities in India. So we operate pretty much as a fully remote team. Currently, we're in San Francisco for Y Combinator. And so we're just here for like, actually we're leaving after ETH Denver. So, so we're just here for a while, and it's definitely been nice to have everyone working together in the same space. But being in crypto and like, with, it's more likely that we'll end up being a remote team, or we'll continue being a remote team. And I think that's the norm in crypto. Like that's more common. And if you're not, then you filter out the talent pool that you can hire from, right? Like if we say we'll only hire from Bangalore, then okay, we're not going to get the people in, in all the other parts of the world.
Yeah. What's so you going through Y Combinator at the minute?
Yeah.
Sick. Best of luck.
Yeah, I'm actually in a space like there's this sub community within Y Combinator called Orange DAO. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like an investment DAO. Like they're all YC founders plus like other portfolio companies. And they have this really awesome workspace that I'm just working out of, even though I had to go outside because it's super cold here, but on the inside, it's super awesome. And yeah, I mean, it's like, this is, and I've met like tons of amazing like founders and builders here. So that has like meeting all these people in person has been new for me. And yeah, that part has been amazing.
Wow. Best of luck, man. What would you guys like? What would the dream scenario to get out of that be? Just funding and accelerator, or?
Yeah, I mean, funding is not necessarily the priority. It's more just like, like building the product that solves the problem and getting customers. I would say like definitely we are looking to work with, we're just looking to become the best user experience for on-ramping and off-ramping. Like, we want to make fiat and crypto more interoperable. That's the goal. Everything else is just like, something you have to do to get there. So so like that's what we're trying to do. Goal is just to like make our product and user experience and like much better than anything else that's out there, and then have work with some of the top teams to integrate that into their product.
Yeah, please solve it, because it's completely a mess.
So
if you could do us all a favor, please.
You should see how much of a mess it is on the inside.
You know what though, mate? It's refreshing to hear like how driven you are to actually just solve the problem as well. It's like nothing else matters. We're just trying to solve that and be the best product that it possibly could be. But kind of before I draw it to a close here, it's been a really good chat, and hearing about your background and everything. Where can people find you? Obviously we'll post the links up, Magik Labs and stuff. Do you want to give a couple of quick shout outs across your accounts and everything? Needless to say, we'll be posting that up as well.
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on Twitter, becoming more active on LinkedIn now. So my name is Shiv Sakhuja. You can find it in the show notes or something probably. That's my Twitter handle too. My company is Magik Labs. That's Magik with a K. The C is more expensive. So yeah, Magik Labs with a K.
I like that.
And you can find me on there. I have my DMs are open, so like feel free to reach out. And I'm not the best with responding always, but I try to respond to everyone and like meet as many cool people as I can. So
that's great, man. Any final thoughts, Grant? Are we good?
No, I'm just happy to see it progress. I think it's one of those completely overlooked aspects of the industry, but it's the biggest bottleneck probably there is. Seen Binance with 100%. On and off ramp problems in the UK like around last year, and yeah, I just hope at least someone we know can fix the problem anyway. But because it's a big one. It is a really big one. So yeah, Shiv, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. And if there's anything you need from us on the Nomad side or the Blockhead side, just give us a shout. I'm more than happy to help.
Great stuff.
Thank you.